Hello, everybody, and welcome to the entertainment headquarters, and welcome to my segment, Kaiju Connections. This is the segment on my channel where I talk all things kaiju, giant monster, from the world of entertainment, television, movies. It's a genre that I've enjoyed and cherished since I was a little kid. And so I've made it a big part of this channel. So right now, I want to talk about just my general thoughts and things that I would like to see and things I would hope to see within the Monsterverse. That's right, the Monsterverse. Because as you know, last year we got Godzilla Kong The New Empire, which was successful. And after the success of that movie, it was not long announced we were getting a sequel in 2027. And we now know the title. And the title for that particular movie is as followed: Godzilla Kong SuperNova. Now, the title alone is fascinating. And, this title could mean a number of things. The title, and even the production title of the movies is also compelling because it doesn't really tell you nothing. So, for example, boom, Zeus is the production title for the next movie. For Godzilla Kong The New Empire, it was Origin, which, it kind of fed back into Kong and his overall story. So before I get into ideas and things that I would like to see go forward within the movie, let's talk about the people behind the movie. So first and foremost, we do have is the director of this next movie. We have Grant Sputer. So Grant Sputer has, to my knowledge, one directorial credit under his belt, and that is, I believe, I Am Mother, which had Hilary Swank. And that particular movie was an interesting sci-fi psychological thriller in many ways. His kind of cinematography, it fits in with, I guess, the Monsterverse. It was very futuristic. His story was very grounded. So because of that, and because of the mixture of that kind of cinematography and the groundedness of the story, I'm hoping we're heading into a more serious, grounded movie, like instead of The New Empire, that for me was more like an action adventure movie, a big summer blockbuster flick, something like Indiana Jones, something of that nature. Some of the Pacific Rim movies are just big, popcorn flicks. But Godzilla 2014, the very first movie that started the Monsterverse, was very much, yes, I know we're dealing with fictional kaiju titans, but just because we're dealing within this fantastical world doesn't mean we can't have our stories and my characters serious and grounded with real hidden messages behind them. And there's somebody else a part of the production of this movie that I believe could be a key to going in that direction. And because I spoke about Godzilla 2014, that was, the first screenplay for that particular movie was written by David Callahan. So David Callahan was the first person that took a crack at Godzilla way back in 2014. And that story was grounded. It had serious characters. It felt heavy. The monsters felt larger than life. And, the story and the characters fit, and it also stuck to the character of Godzilla. Back in 1954, Godzilla, as we know, was like a message for nuclear power and, the fallout of atomic radiation and, the aftermath of that event in the war, and, all what happened in Japan during that time. And then he became like a hero, anti-hero, and became like a protector and savior of Earth. And I very much feel as that this version of Godzilla, the alpha predator within the monster, has stuck to that part of who Godzilla is. And he's been very ferocious. He's been very, animalistic. He's been very territorial. And all of that stuff makes him such a perfect version of this Godzilla for this world. And so I'm happy with how they've represented Godzilla in many, many ways. The next part I would like to talk about why I think the direction of tone and feel of the movie could be going is simply via the cast. So the cast in this movie for me is the best cast we've had in any of the MonsterVerse movies. So we've got Caitlin Dever, who was in the series Last of Us, in a movie that I seen that I was really impressed by, called No One Will Save You. It, of course, has Dan Stevens back, who played Trapper, who was probably the newest and most interesting character we've had introduced to the MonsterVerse. Of course, I did like the character Dr. Andrews and Jaya, who were connected to Kong. They, for me, were really fun characters. But Trapper was a character that I think just stole the show in terms of the human, element of the plot in the last movie. We've got Matthew Modine, Delroy Lindo, Alyssa Denham Carey, and of course Sam Neill, who doesn't really need any introduction because he has starred in many movies, starting probably with the most obvious one, Jurassic Park, Event Horizon. He's done a fantastic job. And being a part of the MonsterVerse feels like a good fit to him. He's kind of sticking to that formula of what he knows. But the just incredible amount of talent and, all of those amazing actors together in one particular movie, for me, tells me that they want to steer the MonsterVerse, hopefully in a much more grounded, serious tone, because those kind of actors can work in science fiction, they can work in the big blockbuster movies, but their kind of performances that I've seen them deliver in their kind of movies, like, for example, Sinners. Sinners had and two actors that are in this movie, Jack O'Connell and Delroy Lindo. They were fantastic in Sinners, and Sinners to me so far is the best movie of 2025. And just you think you're going into a general horror movie, but it's a lot more than just a horror movie. So that surprised me. So I know what these actors can do. So for me, having these actors in this movie tells me hopefully they want to set a stronger, serious tone. I'm hoping the story's more grounded. And I'm hoping having such a strong cast, these are not just a one-off appearance. Because the second point I would like to make, outside of me hoping we're changing direction of the movie, is we need some consistency. We need consistency in plot. We need consistency in direction. Because the thing I will say is, when the MonsterVerse was formed, you had outside properties or outside media like the comic books that were starting to build the building blocks of a much wider world. telling story arcs, prequel novels, prequel stories. But when it comes to the live action movies, they don't really go side to side. It's like there's two separate universes, like a multiverse. You have the live action stories, and then you have the novelizations or the graphic novel prequel books that are telling you all this amazing backstory, but there's no hints at it, or no, any of it, any of the elements of those stories being used within the confines of the movie. And I think it's a shame, because there's a lot of great stories and characters and creatures. For example, Camazots, you know, Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019, for example, where you're introduced to Kong on Skull Island, and Skull Island is now inhabitable. Now, with me not reading the books, I just assumed that because of the events of King of the Monsters and King Ghidorah basically having his own weather system, he affected the planet and affected Skull Island in a way that it became uninhabitable. But in the graphic novel, Camazotz, this creature, is the one that caused the demise of Skull Island. And it would be interesting to feature elements of that within the confines of the movies, but they don't seem to. So we need some more consistency, and we need some real compelling characters. And I think I'd like to believe we're heading in that direction, just for the simple fact is Godzilla is a property. He's a big, larger than life, character and property, but he's also a fictional character. And I doubt many people took it as serious as others until one particular reason, and that is because of the success of Godzilla Minus One. Godzilla Minus One put a lot of credibility onto Godzilla. It showed that you could take a fictional character, take a property and ground it, and have real compelling human characters that truly believe in, that you could believe in, that you could get behind, that you could feel real, true emotion. And because of that movie, and because of its impact and its cultural impact, and the year it came out alongside, uh, you know, Oppenheimer and Barbie, that kind of madness around those two particular movies, this movie was in the forefront of their minds as well, because it had a similar unique tone to Oppenheimer, and it skyrocketed this movie to popularity. Because one, I think it was good timing it came out when those movies came out, but overall, what made this movie so strong is simply because of the characters, the story, and it's just incredible cinematography, it's amazing effects, and the director and his story behind it all. And I think because of the true impact of that movie, I think Legendary, I'm hoping, and Hollywood have seen just how much they could go with the Monsterverse if it was spun round in a new direction, a more seriously toned direction. And having this amazing cast, having this director, having that writer back, all of that together forms for me, hopefully, going forward, more consistency and a stronger, hopefully, plot. Now, the second part of my video, I want to talk about story and characters, creatures, the kaiju, the titans. Because of the name SuperNova, because, as you know, supernova is meant to mean the end of the life of a star. So when you think of a star and all of the metaphors and all of that behind it, a lot of people are assuming that supernova means we're now taking this thing even more into space, more into the sci-fi craziness, which it still could do, but you can still make it somewhat serious and grounded. And of course, when it comes to that, a lot of people have had a lot of high hopes for this particular creature, this Titan, this character, and I'm talking about Space Godzilla. Now, do I think Space Godzilla could be making his way to the Monsterverse? Now, there's a strong possibility that even if it's not Space Godzilla, we could be getting a classic Toho character, because if you go back to the the teaser for New Empire, we are literally only shown a the skulls, and then it panned out to something sitting on a throne. We were finally got the reveal of the Scar King, and we knew straight away who that villain was going to be taking on Godzilla and Kong. Turned out to be, Donkey Kong's long lost uncle, Cranky Kong, because basically that's all I could see when I was finally showcased Scar King, which that kind of was disappointing, but I kind of understood the whole point of what we're doing. He's called Scar King, Kong's called Kong. He can't officially be called King Kong because of licensing still with Universal. So they had to find a way to make Kong the king without calling him King Kong. So they had to devise a story arc, his long lost, great ape tribe being prosecuted and slaved by Scar King. You have to overthrow him to become the king of the Hollow Earth and the great ape tribe, and officially get his butt on the throne, which he finally did in Godzilla Kong, the New Empire. So now he's out the way, and all the focus can now be on Godzilla, who, we need him to fight something and have a reason to fight something big and powerful. And the reason it could potentially be another Toho original is because in the latest trailer, which is a teaser, they show nothing, unlike they did with the New Empire. So it tells me that they want to keep this thing tightly under wraps, and that they want to keep it close to the chest, unlike hiding it straight in my face with the New Empire. And that for me is a positive sign as well. In Space Godzilla, if they're all going to go the super, Nova and bringing in something far superior, he could potentially be the alien threat that we all want to see. But we also could be introduced to another classic character, and this is Gigan. And George Mondino is the artist for these particular images I'm showcasing, and he's a fantastic digital artist who has transferred all of the classic kaiju from Toho into these magnificent modernized, monster versions, and this looks absolutely badass. So this could potentially be another foe that he gets to face. And talking a story, like I mentioned, now that Kong has had his, story come to a very, fine conclusion. He's found his people. He's no longer alone. Hence probably why Jaya and Dr. Andrews are not in the new movie, because where would you fit them in if this movie is going to take a different tone, a different turn, and focus on the second main character in this entire franchise, whose name's right at the front? It's not Kong and Godzilla, it's Godzilla and Kong. So now Godzilla has to come to the forefront. So to bring in two or one of his well-known foes to take on would be an excellent choice. But my only issue with Space Godzilla, we've already had Mecha Godzilla, so do they really want to bring in another foe that's similar to somebody he's already taken on? But to bring in Gigan would be unique. Into how you could bring Gigan in is deep in the hollow earth, we find an undiscovered spacecraft with a host of alien beings on, and a part of their spaceship also had the remains of an unidentified alien carcass that then gets transformed into Gigan. That is something that, potentially could be a part of the plot. Bring in some Exians or aliens from, from the dark moons of, a killer star, something of that nature. We could always get extraterrestrials in this movie with Gigan or potentially Space Godzilla. But if it's not those, why not bring in one more creature before I move on to my next plot point? And that is, why don't we bring in Crystalac from the Godzilla game, who's a fantastic, great design there. Also, I believe, by George Mondino, and just brilliant. So, if the focus is going to be more on Godzilla, we need to find a way to make him the forefront of our story. And I believe the best way to do that is, if you look at what it says about a supernova, it says a supernova is a powerful explosion of a star marking the end of its life cycle. And I find that very, very compelling, because let's look at Godzilla as a whole. During his time in the Monsterverse, back in Legacy of Monsters, we seen him get hit by a nuclear bomb when they tried to kill him back in 1954. Then we come up to 2019, where he is hit with an oxygen destroyer. He then makes his way to his underwater, temple to regenerate, but it's going to take so long that the world's probably going to be destroyed the time he's fully generated naturally. So Dr. Zarazawa does the ultimate sacrifice and sets off another nuclear bomb that regenerates him instantly, which isn't a natural course of how his body, I guess, evolves or mutates or heals. Then we get to the point where he does that big nuclear, energy releasing blast and kills Ghidorah. And a few years later, he has no choice but to find a way to defeat a threat that he knows coming. So then he breaks into, he fights Tiamat, kills Tiamat, goes into Tiamat's lair and uses the solar effects of the sun's energy to start this evolution process, which then transforms his body into what we now know is Godzilla evolved. A lot of those instances I've told are things that are man-made, or things that he's had to endure to be the alpha species and the alpha titan of this planet. But throughout it all, there's nothing to say it doesn't have a long, slow burning effect deep within. And who's to say that the main focus of the next movie isn't Godzilla himself, when his body begins to now fall apart and he starts to get to the point where he cannot no longer control how his body's, is controlling, the impulses of the radiation within his body. And like in Godzilla versus Destroyer, who's to say he doesn't start having some sort of meltdown effect? But in this case, it's not just a meltdown, it's a supernova type of event where his body is literally slowly dying, and he's now having to attack places on Earth, power plants, anything that can emit enough radiation or resources to keep his body burning and staying alive. And because of those elements, he in turn becomes the biggest threat on the planet. And I feel this could be one of the plot elements that we see within this story. And all these amazing actors who are under, don't know the characters. We know who Trapper is. We know he's some sort of Titan veterinarian. So maybe he, alongside a scientist who could be played by Caitlin Dever, discovers these hidden elements within Godzilla that's starting this chain reaction, this supernova event within himself. And you've got all the other cast. One could be government officials, the rest monarch, and they're clashing over how they want to deal with this Godzilla supernova event. Some want to save him, some want to terminate him. And that would create such a compelling story among these great characters and actors playing them. And at the same time, instead of showcasing Godzilla as this devastating beast, which you still can throughout the process of the movie, but also get to know a little of his backstory, where he's been, how he functions, and seeing the emotions on his face as he's full of frustration, anger, but also pain. And it turns the tide in making us as an audience have great sympathy for him and want to champion him to survive and to win. That's just another part of the plot that I have been thinking about for this particular movie. And because of that, it would also create a great opportunity to build the plot like Minus One. Like Minus One was about a kamikaze pilot full of survival guilt. We're going to be in a situation, if this plot went forward, where we are doing nothing but have great sympathy for Godzilla, but we also want to save the planet. And you're going to see the turmoil between these characters trying to make a decision on how to deal with this particular situation with Godzilla. And then we'll have Kong. Supernova event where a star essentially dies and explodes. There may be an element within the Earth that is as strong or as powerful as a star itself, and that would be the Earth's core. So who's to say a part of Kong's plot is while they're battling to save or stop Godzilla up on the surface, they have to use Kong to receive something deep within the Earth to save him or destroy him. And that would be a part of the magma or a part of the Earth's energy, like the hollow Earth's energy. Where does that come from? It must come from part of the Earth's core. But as he's traveling down deeper into the hollow Earth, deeper than he's ever gone, he may come across a couple of titans that, he has to face off against. And that potentially could be Megalon is an idea, who is also a fan favourite. Or another part of this idea is, just like Crystalak, what about bringing in Osidius? We don't really have a rock magma titan in the Monsterverse, or to my knowledge, the lore of Godzilla outside of this game. So bringing in something like this would be a unique opportunity, and bring in the opportunity to bring in yet another badass Titan. And of course, what would happen at the end of that if this energy is retrieved or whatever? Godzilla and Kong would have to meet up one more time. They begrudgingly became allies, but now they potentially would have to become foes again. So I would believe foes in the beginning, then friends or allies again once this situation is averted. But there's nothing to say that whatever Kong's face down in the Hollow Earth or something else that's on the planet, they've got to team up again. So it could be Sidious. It still could be Crystalak. It could still be, of course, Gigan, and it could still be Space Godzilla. But there's another element of this plot that we haven't talked about, and that is if we are going to go down the meltdown supernova route, there's another element that could be brought in, and that is to bring in the most dangerous kaiju to many fans is, minds, and that is the Kaiju Destroyer. He could be the catalyst between saving and destroying Godzilla and destroying the world. And who's to say, as Godzilla is going through this turmoil on the surface because of the events of 2019 and trying to keep the plot consistent and bring some continuity into it, who's to say that something, when those events transpire, didn't end up in the Hollow Earth and became Destroyer? And Kong first meets Destroyer as these events are also happening up on the world's surface. And who's to say the only way to destroy Destroyer, is to make sure that this supernova type event with Godzilla is around at the same time, because maybe the supernova Godzilla is the key to defeating Destroyer himself. And it's very funny that at the same time as these, titles and, photos of the set in Brisbane came about, were treated to this. A Space Godzilla and a Destroyer pop vinyl, and a very funky looking Godzilla. So are these clues hidden within Funko Pops that are clues to the next film? Who knows? But that's just my quick thoughts on what I would like to see, or an idea of what I, think potentially could be, events that could potentially transpire in the next movie. But the main things that I want to focus on is I want a more grounded plot, a more serious tone movie. The cast, I hope these are going to be the faces of the monsterverse going forward with some consistency. Like I say, it feels like each movie is an anthology movie. It's a standalone movie. You don't have to go from one to the other. There's just little hints from the previous movies that are in the following one, but they're not really crucial for you to have to watch them to see the next film. Where it would be nice to have, like the Marvel, slow building blocks to something bigger and greater. And we'll also have Monarch Legacy of Monsters 2, which I believe, I do have high hopes. Godzilla is the focus of this movie. Kong, with the teaser at the end of Legacy of Monsters Season 1, he certainly looks like he's going to be the main focus of Season 2, which is great. He has a season, Godzilla had a season. Now let Kong, be the focus of Season 2 of Monarch. And now let's put Godzilla right in the middle. give him all our attention, make the audience see him more than just the Alpha Titan, more than this big, larger than life beast. Make him somebody you want to cherish, someone we want to protect, someone that we want to see survive and cheer for going forward. That's just my ideas for the Monsterverse. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Until then, keep the kaiju love alive, and I'll catch us all at the next one. Bye for now.